So I think I don't know what happened here. Ken, you're very lucky to have Ken, but we enjoy each other and enjoy Ohio. We have a lot of common things that we push, and Ken's very good for employers down there. So you're very lucky to have Ken Montgomery down there in Cincinnati. Here's some pictures of Ken. There he is with his daughter and his grandkids. So he's got a couple grandkids, his daughter and his wife. So I thought I'd introduce that. You guys, but I'll get on to the boring stuff. OSHA's mission is to protect health in the U.S. When it started in 1970, signed by Richard Nixon, we had 38 people every day were dying on the job. We're down to about 15, but it's still every day 15 people go to work and don't come home safely. So very important what we do for safety and health. It's very important that BWC, we're very lucky that BWC in the state of Ohio has a very active and aggressive safety and health program, and they do free consultations that I say free. So I encourage you to use them. A lot of you do. Injuries and illnesses are down, but we've still got people that get seriously injured that significantly affects their ability to provide for their family. Used a balanced approach. We are primarily enforcement. Our offices in Ohio are enforcement offices. We do enforcement inspections. Means any deficiencies or violations result in citations or penalties. We also do outreach, which is what I'm doing now, and compliance assistance, planning some events with BWC in on some of the areas where people are getting killed and seriously hurt. We're looking at landscaping. We're looking at trench and excavation safety. And I love the events that Greg showed, great training classes that we even go to as well. So take advantage of BWCs. We are the U.S. Department of Labor. States across the U.S. have a right to have their own OSHA program or not. Ohio is run by the Secretary of Labor, and we are U.S. Department of Labor employees. Our new Secretary of Labor is Marty Walsh. He used to be the mayor of Boston. He came from the trades, the laborers union. He's very familiar with safety and health, so we're fortunate in that aspect that he knows the language and the lingo of safety and health. I think Marty is going to be good. He's a collaborator, and that's going to help companies as well. Jim Frederick came from the U.S. Steelworkers. He's the Deputy Assistant Secretary, and he has been the primary person that's been pushing through all the executive orders from President Biden related to COVID. Jim is very knowledgeable in safety and health. We're very lucky to have him as well. And now we just got confirmation, and he held his first town hall meeting this week. OSHA staff, his name's Doug Parker. He's now the head of OSHA, our agency. He also has experience with safety and health. He also has experience with MSHA, and Safety and Health Administration. He comes straight from Cal OSHA. So Cal OSHA is a very progressive program. So if you read the tea leaves, he was one of the first states to come up with a COVID standard, emergency temporary standard. So Doug will be very supportive of OSHA's efforts in those regards. This is how our agency is divided up across the country. We are in the middle section, Region 5. Our regional office is based out of Illinois. So we have Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Of these, the asterisk plans have their own state plan program. So Indiana and Michigan, if your company crosses boundaries, they have to have safety and health standards related to their own states. But they have to be minimally as effective as OSHA's federal states. So then Minnesota has their own state as well. Wisconsin, Illinois, and Ohio are enforced. All private employers are enforced through the U.S. Department of Labor. So Illinois has its own state plan for state employees. So in Ohio, we get a lot of questions as to who is responsible for safety and health enforcement for state and public employees. And that is PERP, or the Public Employees Risk Reduction Program, that's under the umbrella of the State of Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. So they do have to follow OSHA standards, but they're not enforced by us. OSHA staff, OSHA has a amazingly small budget in the grand scheme of things with the federal government. OSHA has an annual budget of under 600 million. You're thinking 600 million, that's a lot, right? But really, in the whole federal government, 50 states across the U.S., not a lot of money. We were down to 1,600 staff in OSHA, and that's covering over 130 million workers. So you can tell we don't have a lot of OSHA inspectors per covered employees in workplaces, but that is changing, as you'll see soon. In Ohio, we have 4 area offices: Toledo, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. We have 55 inspectors on up for over 5 million workers. So it's one employee, one OSHA compliance officer per about 130,000 employees. So we try to prioritize our staff to inspections where we make the most difference. So, but OSHA is hiring. Keep an eye on usajobs.com. We have been given our highest budget amount that's proposed. It has to get the president's signature, but they are planning to add, have a lot more compliance officers based on the budget. So interested in applying and working for the U.S. Department of Labor, keep an eye on USA Jobs, and you can get updates on when we're applying, or when you can apply for jobs. This is how our jurisdiction's divided up in Ohio. As you can see, Cincinnati's covered down here in the lower southwest part of the state, and I'm diagonal from Ken's jurisdiction. So we're up here with 12 counties in the northeast part of the state, but we have the most covered employees. We have a lot of manufacturing up in the Cleveland area, and unfortunately a lot of fatalities and amputations. Machinery and equipment, people are operating up there. We track the fatalities to see if there's trends. This is region wide, but we also divide it by state. This is a busy slide, and I believe Beth, you have a copy of the one I sent you that they can get access to, right? Is that correct? Will they have access to our PowerPoint?
Yes, they will, Howie.
Okay. So some of this will be if you're interested in it, but we look at construction, manufacturing, and other industries. And if you look, we added unfortunately, a COVID category because of so many fatalities. And you look in calendar year 2020, we more than doubled the fatalities in our region. And a lot of that was based on COVID reported fatalities where they got COVID during their work and unfortunately died. So that went up, but we do track that. Ohio gets its fair share of fatalities every year. In calendar year 2021, we were up to 56, and I'll talk about the categories. The last 5 years, Cleveland usually gets the most of fatalities that we inspect, and that's because we have a lot of the higher hazard industries up, a lot of manufacturing. We do have a lot of construction as well. Columbus is second, and you get Toledo and Cincinnati. That's over the last 5 years. Where are we finding the fatalities happening? Caught in or caught between equipment, forklifts, that's struck by falling objects, and struck by vehicles, falls. Continues to be the #1 killer in construction. Electrocution used to be the 4th highest. Now it's become exposure, and that includes the COVID related fatalities. So that's why exposure, normally that's exposure to chemicals or maybe heat stress, something like that. But if your safety and health program focuses on caught in, electrocution, struck by, and falls, you're going to account for probably 80% of these fatalities that we regularly investigate. So it's important that your safety and health programs address those. If you look at the types of industries, construction usually is around 1/3 of our fatalities. It's a little less than that in Ohio. Manufacturing is a smaller piece of the pie. It used to be higher, but as manufacturing jobs have gone down, we've lost that. Now, that is the service and distribution, warehousing, industries like that, service industries. A lot of that is because we've increased in the distribution. You know, the warehouses out there, Amazon warehouses, they're increasing across the board. Columbus has got a big hub down there near the airport, near the, I forget what the airport's now called. It used to be Rickenbacker. I think it still is Rickenbacker, but they have a big hub of warehouses there. What we're seeing in warehouses are the struck by forklifts and fatalities related to material handling. So if you have material handling in your workplace, you know, look at your pedestrian safety. Look at how your loading dock is being handled. Look at, especially in the winter, guiding vehicles in, making sure they're chalking their tires. We're seeing a lot of fatalities in those areas. So make sure you're looking at that. Look at safe storage. Look at your racks. Look if there's damage to your storage racks. We have a lot of that. Another indicator I put up was size of the companies. So look at the number of fatalities for 1 to 25 employees. So what would you think is a contributing factor that's why those number of fatalities in smaller companies is there? Since we're not in person and I can't call on somebody, I won't answer it for you. What I think a lot of it is they don't have the resources to have a full-time safety and health professional. So a lot of people in these smaller companies wear multiple hats, including the 26 to 100 employees, which is the next one. So smaller companies have a higher risk of fatalities. And in a lot of it, especially these companies that are growing, they don't necessarily hire a full-time safety. In our small breakout group, it was brought up how, you know, when you're reducing your employers, the number of employees you have, safety sometimes gets put to the side. It's important that you focus on that and make sure that you're not forgetting about that. That's kind of one of the reasons I put those questions in or suggested those is don't let safety get left behind as you're focusing on getting the work done. Fatalities by age. We've seen an increase in the risk of older employees from 50 to 60 to 70 years old. Why are we seeing that? I think people are working for longer. I think they're working a lot longer and maybe doing the same type of work that they always did without realizing that you can't quite do that anymore. Believe it or not, I used to be good in basketball. I used to be able to jump up and touch the rim. I know nobody can believe that now, but I haven't tried it lately. I'm pretty sure I can't. But in my mind, I think I can. I think I can step out on the court and I still got game. But, you know, in reality, that applies to workers out there that are doing some of the tasks they've done for a long time. Now, some people will tell you the Gen Z and millennials are probably not doing as much dangerous work anymore, or debatable whether they're doing work at all. But I'm not going to go there. I have daughters that are in that category. I think they do things a different way. And we're actually getting courses on how to manage millennials and Gen Z. But no, they do a good job, and I will not insult my daughters and their peers. Maybe there's different ways of doing things, but keep an eye on your aging workforce is my point on this slide. Just some of the fatalities we saw this last year. 9 were COVID related. 4 involved pedestrian or powered industrial vehicles, forklifts. Keep an eye on where your pedestrians interact and intersect with your forklifts. And forklifts are running around like mad, especially when it gets busy. If you have a business where the holidays increases your work, pay attention to the vehicle and the material handling. We had a nitrogen was in an airline, 1 electrocution. You know, keep an eye on exposed wires out there when you do your walkthroughs. Caught in machinery and equipment in between the load. That was also, it wasn't a forklift, but it was related. It was material handling where they were carrying a load and it came down and it came off and struck the employee. We had 2 falls, 1 trip. How would somebody trip? Same level falls. BWC stats will tell you that same level falls are some of their highest number of claims, workers' comp claims. What we're finding, this one was unfortunate. The employee tripped. He broke 2 bones in his lower leg, and then an infection during surgery at the hospital cost him his life. Heat stress, that's coming up, and chemical exposure. So those are some of the things we've found out there. OSHA has really good resources. I'm going to switch over to COVID. Does anybody have any questions about those previous slides before I move on? All right. Greg talking, so I'll say that no. Everybody's astounded and amazed or fast asleep. So we'll talk about COVID. That's where OSHA has become, the name OSHA is known now. We've seen late night comics even use the word OSHA now. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but are we infamous or are we famous? But COVID is a real thing. It is. Coronavirus is real. It's very contagious. And we've come up with guidelines. Go to our website. They update it all the time, especially now with the new emergency temporary standard. We do have a good website. I am proud of what they do with that. We did issue first emergency temporary standard that came out on June 10th. It went into effect shortly after, and it does expire in January or in December. Now, it was focused on healthcare workers. So it got narrowed down to the people most at risk. So unless you have a healthcare setting or a nursing home, or you have a nursing facility in your business, you probably weren't as affected by our emergency temporary. It had requirements for healthcare settings, the physical distancing, the masks, paid medical removal for employees that went vaccine or had effects from that. And the big thing I would tell you is stay tuned to CDC guidelines. OSHA has tried to mirror that all along and what the current CDC guidelines are. Following CDC guidelines, it's going to be hard for OSHA to issue any citations to you. The basic requirements, which I would highly recommend that you have something to address these, are a kind of plan on how you have protect workers' COVID safety. That includes screening. In this case, it's healthcare worker screening, face mask, PPE, cleaning, ventilation, reporting, and anti-retaliation. So the vaccination is going to be the big thing for the new ETS, but we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. We do have what's called a national emphasis program where we targeted a number of companies for exposure to COVID. Now, when we first issued that in March, before the emergency temporary standard came out, we were doing inspections in like meat packing facilities, processing plants, where people were in tight proximity to each other, not just healthcare. Now, after July in the emergency temporary standard, and we took those inspections away for the meat packing, the warehousing, the meat, food processing, and we just focused on healthcare and nursing home facilities. But we are going to revise the national emphasis program based on this new emergency temporary standard, pending the court challenges, which I'll talk about. Like I said, OSHA was focusing its resources on where there's a big chance for an outbreak. That's where companies with a lot of employees, companies that interacted with the public, or that treated known COVID patients. We adjusted it, like I said, to take away the secondary list and just focus on inspections. We do unprogrammed follow-up inspections and program. Unprogrammed are employee complaints. So what we do, Cleveland gets the most complaints, second highest number of complaints in the U.S. Tampa, Florida is the only office that gets more complaints than OSHA in Cleveland. Most of them, believe it or not, aren't complaining about me, at least not recently until like COVID came out, but complaining about worker safety at their place of employment. But the healthcare inspections, we look at, and I don't know how many companies here are on this represented during this presentation, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. We do have an updated interim enforcement response plan that is on our website. It's dated in July. I'm sure this will be updated based on our new emergency temporary. In the previous fiscal year, which starts October through the end of September, we received 411 complaints in Ohio, in the Ohio area offices. Of those complaints, we inspected 108 of them. So only about 25% of the complaints we received, we actually inspected. The other 75%, we sent letters to the company and called them. So those are called our phone fax or non-formal complaint process. If you get one of those, and if you've had one, it's very important to get back to us as soon as possible. Don't ignore us. Because if we don't hear back from you or we get a crappy response, we're going to go do an inspection there. So we did 52 of the planned or targeted national emphasis program inspections, and we investigated 25 worker fatalities that were reported to us. These are some of the inspection nationwide from when the pandemic kind of hit hard in March of 2020. 4,000, over 4,000 in received nationwide, and 369 reported fatalities. So the severe injury or illness were hospitalizations reported by employers where a person was admitted into a hospital and put on a ventilator. So a number of those we inspected, and a number of them we just did through phone fax. So you can see we conducted nationwide around 1,600 inspections. We also did 1,100 remote, where our co-shows didn't even show up to the site. We just called the company and did everything electronically. So if you look, 917 citations, not a lot. I think what we found, most companies were doing the right thing and trying to do things right. So not that many citations, and around $6 million in penalties assessed related to COVID. Now, guess what? And everyone's reading about this. It's in the papers. This is all referenced in the path out of the pandemic, which is President Biden's plan. But he dictated that we develop a rule requiring employers with 100 or more employees to have fully vaccinated or have a negative test result. This is impacting over 80 million workers, and this is what came out to our emergency temporary standard. However, as you know, or probably if you've been following any of the news reports, there were multiple lawsuits filed, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a stay that halted this temporary standard from being implemented. However, be assured we are continuing our work to ensure that workers have a safe. These are our talking points that we are going with. We know employers have already implemented elements of this, and we recognize that COVID's still a dangerous hazard. We're confident we're going to prevail in the courts as an agency. We are taking this up through the courts right now. We're encouraging employers to voluntarily comply with the standard as we continue to go through that route, because the faster our company gets to the herd immunity, the faster we get back to normal. And normal's a good thing. We just haven't had it for a long time. Our Secretary of Labor, the Solicitor of Labor, said that we are taking this to court, confident that we have the authority to issue this standard. We'll see. Is going with the legal position that the federal guidelines preempt any state requirements. So where that goes. But that's where we're at right now. I encourage you to go to our website for details of this. If you have 100 or more employees, obviously you want to keep them working. So whatever programs you have in place to address COVID is going to help your work site, regardless of any questions about COVID that I probably can't answer. If anything came up, Greg, on the chat.
Howie, actually, I did have one question that just came in for an emergency temporary standard. What's the typical length that those are permitted to be in place?
6 months.
Months. Thank you.
So this
Yeah,
one,
keep dropping your questions. Yeah, keep dropping your questions, guys. It's going to be a lot better to clear things up right now than after you leave.
yeah, the emergency temporary standards are in effect for 6 months. They can request an extension if it's pertinent. You know, OSHA has the requirement to issue these to show that there's a grave danger. And we're saying that COVID-19, as it's over 700,000 deaths across, I believe across the world. I'm not sure even the number right now, but you know, that's why OSHA's been trying to get this standard out. So I know there's a lot of political disagreements. Very disappointed by people, you know, the threats we're getting from people, you know, but people have a very, very strong positions on that. And I would never insult somebody's position on this, but I am communicating OSHA's position on this. And we are the top safety and health enforcement agency in the country. So I just wanted to talk real quick about the functions of the area offices. I kind of touched on it. We do inspections, compliance assistance outreach. We collect penalties and we assure abatement if we issue citations. So that's what our area offices do. We have processes in place. I do want to let you know we have gone to electronic files because we haven't had our offices open. So we're doing things a little different, but we are doing on-site inspections and we will continue to do that because unfortunately people keep getting hurt, seriously injured and killed on the job. And our job is to prevent that and to ensure companies are in compliance with our regulations. We do unprogrammed versus programmed. Programmed are the scheduled ones. They're the random ones. Like with the COVID, we will have a number of random inspections. Randomized list will be generated with the companies that we're targeting. We also have randomized lists for amputation emphasis program, local emphasis programs for silica, lead, construction, falls, a lot of different ones. The unprogrammed are the ones we can't control. Those are reports of injuries, reports of hospitalizations, and reports of fatalities and employee complaints. We categorize our unprogrammed activity based on the imminent danger. We will go out right away on an imminent danger. That could be something like an unprotected trench or employees up on a roof 25 foot high without fall protection. And somebody out there to check on that. Thing that could happen is we get a call reporting something and I don't send somebody out. OSHA didn't do anything even though we were aware of it. Then next up is fatalities or reports of catastrophes. Catastrophe is 3 or more people hospitalized due to a single incident on the job. And then we do complaints and referrals. Program, like I said, we have special emphasis programs, and we also have a site-specific targeting program based on injury and illness rates of companies. Violations, this is a great thing you can look up on our website. Go under data analysis, top citations that we're issuing, and you can look at that, and that can focus your inspections in your facility. See what we're citing in your NAICS code, meaning your industry. So type in your industry classification code, it'll show you how to do that, and you can run how much we're finding during inspections out there. But overall, fall protection is our number one, continues to be scaffolding and ladders in construction and fall protection training. Those are our biggest ones in construction. Also chemical hazard communication, training your new employees on the hazards related to chemicals, showing them what an SDS is and global harmonization. Respirators went up to number 3 this year, and that's a lot of our COVID related violations are respirators. So if you're requiring your employees to treat COVID patients and you require respirators, you have to have a fit testing, you have to have a medical evaluation. Those are our 2 top standards on that. Lockout, tagout, machine guarding are big in general industry and machinery and equipment, where we're finding amputations and finding deaths from people being caught in equipment. And then powered industrial trucks, the training, taking forklifts out of service that have deficiencies, like if the horn's not working, if the tire's flat, if the load is not being handled correctly. Those are common ones. And then personal protective equipment, wearing proper eye and face protection.
Howie, can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's a couple questions that popped up in the chat. First one, there was a question, what are the stats for active shooter reports? I know that may not necessarily be, within your presentation, but if you maybe speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, number one, we don't have a OSHA standard on workplace violence, although it is a priority standard for the new administration to look at developing one. We do conduct inspections of work-related fatalities where a worker gets killed by something like this. For the most part, that becomes a local law enforcement issue. There's been some real tragic ones where somebody was being fired and he brought in a gun and shot up a bunch of the people. That was in Illinois. Where we see it most are where you have a reasonably anticipated chance for workplace violence. That includes late night retail facilities, like gas stations, restaurants that get robbed a lot in dangerous areas, and like mental treatment facilities where there are high risk patients or people that are being treated there that are violent. So it's important that companies have a program in place to address reasonably anticipated workplace violence incidents out there. And we have issued citations under our general duty clause for lack of a program, but those are rare. Unfortunately, we highly recommend companies have an active shooter protocol in place. We do in our office. It's not required by a standard, but if a company, the greater the risk that a company has that, the greater the need for it. Most active shooter situations from employees that have been fired or what have you, for whatever reason, those are local law enforcement, and those are just downright murder investigations. So OSHA generally doesn't do a lot on those. Hopefully that answered a little bit about that. Did you have another, Greg?
Okay. Yeah, there was another one that was a message sent over to me. The question was, is the company responsible for the cost of the weekly testing, or is that on the employee?
So with the new standard, a company has the right to charge the employee for it, unless there is a union contract that would prevent that. So the standard does allow employers to transfer the cost for testing if an employee refuses to get vaccinated to the employee themselves. The best resource you have for that is there are FAQs, frequently asked questions on the website under the COVID standard. They're very good. They're organized by kind of topic, and that question is in there. So I refer people to our frequently asked questions for that. But this standard is usually OSHA standards require the employer to cover the cost, but this one does not specify that. Hopefully that answers.
And then I just had, well, I think that answers it. And we'll try to get that link down in the chat. I'll try to find it in between questions, or Carrie, if you're still out there, if you don't mind pulling it up for me, I'll pick on her. She helps me out a lot. So I had one other one that just came in. Does OSHA specify what type of face mask must be worn? That's kind of a loaded question. Depends.
I don't know enough about the standard, the new standard, if that's what you're talking about. It's I can't remember that one. I don't want to answer that without giving you the specifics. I know there's a difference between face masks and face shields and respirators. So the respirators are required for employees that are expected to treat or do work around known COVID patients. And that usually applies in the healthcare facilities and nursing homes where, they know that a person has COVID. They have to provide care or assistance to that person in some way. Therefore, they're required to wear a respirator. That has to be a NIOSH approved N95 at a minimum. Okay. Now, the face mask or face shields, it's a covering, and that is to prevent you from spreading whatever you may have to somebody else. Those are not designed for, they're not specifically required for your own protection. They're required to prevent you from, sharing your germs as readily with other employees where you may have COVID. So that's the difference on that. I don't remember the specifications for that, but I know there's been talk. I've gotten questions a lot about the face shields versus face masks. Face shields will stop your spit, I guess. I use highly technical terms like spit, but sharing your own germs, it will stop it and deflect it. But if you're in close proximity with someone over a period of time, obviously a face covering that's close to your face is and that has good material will probably confine that better than a face shield that's in the open. That's just common sense, Howie talking, and I'm not referring to the standard. So hopefully that helps.
Great, thank you.
All right. The fines, they change every year now based on a rule that came out for all federal agencies, Osha. Right now, the maximum penalty is $13,653 per serious citation. That's where you get the newspaper reportings of around 14,000. This will change in January. My guess is it will go up to around 14,000. For repeated citations, which companies are intentionally or knowingly violating the OSHA standards, those can go up to 136, maybe close to 140,000 for the next one. What happens if your company doesn't pay fines? This comes up a lot. We do go into debt collection. We give a company a 30-day warning that we haven't received your fines. We're not set up to be a debt collection agency, so we will refer it to a third party out of our national office, which is a debt collection agency, and then they eventually get referred to the Treasury Department, and they can put a lien on your tax return. So please pay your fines. Also come for an informal conference and discuss them. But if you can't make a payment, call me, call Ken. Let the office know. We'll work with you. But if it gets into debt collection, it's out of our hands, right? So we have no authority to modify your payment plans or get you a payment plan once it goes to the third-party debt collection. So it's important to communicate with your area office if you have problems and can't make a payment. We do criminal referrals, rare, but it's related to fatality, a workplace fatality where it is willful violation. So we've had a few of those, unfortunately. That's a different level of requirements for conviction. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. We had a company in 2019 where two of the employer representatives and the company itself were given felony convictions for obstruction of justice. That was a fatality that happened in 2012 at a plant in our jurisdiction where employees had reported to the upper management that we think somebody's going to get killed unless they fix this racking system problems. A week later, an employee got killed and an employee got seriously burnt. And when we got a hold of these, we got emails back that said, we didn't really mean that. And what we found out, unfortunately, is the upper managers were making them do that. So don't lie. Don't obstruct justice. That can be bad too. So you have a requirement to report any hospitalizations, amputations, or loss of an eye. Loss of an eye meaning actual enucleation where the eye is lost, not just loss of vision. Hospitalization, they have to get admitted for treatment, not for observation. If you're admitted for observation, but not treatment, you don't have to report that within 24 hours. And any fatalities have to be reported within 8 hours. You can do that online or call 1-800-321-OSHA, or you can call the OSHA office in your. You have electronic log. If you have any more employees, you have to do your 300A form every year. So that's coming up. So compile that, get ready to do that. And then we are looking at, if you've seen the news, back to the original requirements for submission of the entire 300 log for large employers. Important that you understand workers' rights, and we do have a whistleblower unit in OSHA. We have the right to report unsafe workplace conditions and participate in an OSHA inspection. Understand those rights. We do have a whistleblower unit that investigates. Retaliation doesn't have to be firing. It can also be changing their job so they get less money, blacklisted from hiring, etc. So heat, even though we're going away from heat right now, there is an executive order to address heat, and we have put out an announced proposed rulemaking. It's out there now. So if you have comments on that, water, rest, and shade, make sure you have a heat stress program for your workers out there. We are looking at that, and that will be a big thing next year. We have a good website. As I told you, go there. We've got good training videos. BWC's got a really good website with free training. I encourage you to visit both of those if you need help. Our three major events coming up: heat stress kicking off in May, trench safety in June, and Safe and Sound Week, which is in August. Actually, those are coming up next year as well. Like I said, and OSHA. I know we're running close to time, and I wanted to get to a couple questions.
Okay.
Folks, anything else you want to ask me while you got me on the line?
Yeah. So Howie, I had one. I mean, this one. I think this one might be a little difficult to answer, but if the testing centers become overwhelmed to where they can't produce test results timely, you know, if any federal help or programs are going to be available to help expedite the process or to get the results. So I mean, that can be probably something that's very difficult to predict that.
Yeah, on advice from counsel, I refuse to answer that question. Actually, it is a very good question. What I advise all companies to do is, and what we did in our guidance that's listed online, is make efforts and document your efforts to be in compliance with any standards that are out there, including the COVID standards. If you document that you made the efforts and you can't, you know, for whatever reason, back like when the N95s were hard to get, if employers documented that they were making reasonable efforts to do that, we were, you know, giving them a consideration for their efforts. But that's all I can tell you with that. I don't know the answer.
And I mean, to me, I would think what I really liked about the initial document that came out, I think back in March was, I mean, to me, you were exercising reasonableness, you know, good faith effort. If you're trying, I mean, that's what I try to, you know, inform companies. I direct them, you know, to that page, you know, for guidance, but, you know, always you're making that good faith effort and document, you know, your process, you know, to kind of back that up that you're making your honest effort. But so, Joe Blower, it looks like you might have a question. I know you're waving at me for some reason. How about you want to unmute and then you can answer your question directly to Howie.
He's got to unmute.
Yeah, you're going to have to unmute, Jeff.
There we go. Now you got me?
Yep.
Okay. Greg and Howie, this is a question for both of you, if you would please. Scenario, medical surveillance, respirator fit testing. Say if I had a date of September 1st, primarily on an annual that my employees had to go back for their medical surveillance to get a fit testing. And they missed that date. We wasn't able to do it primarily for a couple of different reasons because of COVID, and also for as well the issues that would surround for them to wear a respirator for basically to enter confined space hasn't come up. So where do I need to be concerned about that, or what do I need to do?
Well, if he hasn't got his fit test and you send him into that, then you're in violation, right?
Oh yes, I understand that. That ain't going to happen, sir.
But we have to, our burden as an agency is to show that, there's a hazard. So we would have to have an exposure to it. So if somebody's not fit tested or hasn't got their, surveillance yet, and we're there and they haven't needed to wear their respirator, then we can't cite anything.
Oh, okay. So that's what I just want to make sure that I was clear on that, because yeah, for one thing, no, I can, it's just like I've talked to Greg a little bit about this before. If they go into confined space, they're going to make sure they're going to have a respirator and they're going to be fit tested. But we haven't had any issues where we've had to shut down to basically for them to do that. So I just want to make sure that I didn't have an issue or concern.
Yeah, you're technically, you're technically in violation of having somebody that's not fit tested, but you're not in actual violation because you haven't required them to use the respirator.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Howie, I'm going to throw one at you. Just I have in my head. Carrie Gray and I, we're teaching a record keeping class coming up in about 2 weeks. We're approaching the end of the year. Can you, for the everybody that's on right now, what are the biggest issues that you see with record keeping mistakes? Because we're approaching the end of the year, we're going to have to make sure our logs are updated, get our annual summary together. What tidbits can you offer, or what are the big mistakes that you're seeing as far as record keeping goes?
Well, number one, I told Carrie not to ask me any questions because she's here by invitation only. She shouldn't be coming down to harass me. I'm just kidding. Carrie does a great job. Just kidding, Carrie. Yeah, I'd say the number one. Well, it's basically if you're keeping a computerized one or that fills in automatically, that helps a lot. A lot of times companies don't fill them in, they don't sign it at the end by one of the high-ranking officials at the company, and they miss things. So the biggest one we're going to cite is missing, not putting an injury that was an actual workplace injury on the log, right? And we've had those, a big challenge during COVID was, whether it's work related or not. Now those are tough ones for us because, the first case of COVID at a workplace is probably not work related, right? I mean, if you're in a car repair shop, it's probably hard for it to be work related because you're not treating any COVID patients, right? So it's brought in to work by somebody. Now, if somebody brings that in and all of a sudden you've got an outbreak of, 10 of your 12 employees now have COVID, well, there's a good likelihood that several of them got it at work, right? Now, attorneys have been advising companies, on whether or not they should report it or not. Now, we've had situations where it looks like they should have recorded it and they didn't. That's the biggest one during COVID. Just in doing the 301s, doing the follow-up, the specific ones, the detailed reports and an accident investigation and reporting out on that. We see some cases of that. And then there's a posting requirement as well, but I haven't seen a lot of posting violations. So normally I'd say the two highest are not having it when you're supposed to and missing an incident and not recording it.
Okay, I've got another one for myself. This one is getting way off topic. How contentious is it right now between Osha and South Carolina? Is that, with that state?
I canceled my Myrtle Beach this year, so no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. They have their, South Carolina has their own program. So I don't know. I hope that we can come to a consensus across the country, but it's being tough right now. So
I think that's all the questions that I have down in the chat. If you got anything, guys, we're running out of time. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it back off to Beth. And Howie, I want to appreciate you joining us today. It was a pleasure to listen to you. I hope everybody got something out of it. And Beth, I'll hand it off to you to kind of close out the show.
Absolutely. Howie, thank you so much. We appreciate all of your discussion today, even fielding a couple tough ones from your colleagues. So you're a champ, and thanks for all this great information. It's really easy to see you're a proud dad, and thank you for your personal why around safety. I think that was a great reminder to start our discussion. I'm hoping that folks who are looking for opportunities or know folks who are looking for opportunities, check out usajobs.com. And safety is definitely more important than ever at COVID's ever-changing state. Look up the top 10 violations that your company's NAICS code is covered by. So that was one I definitely wrote down. So make sure you're checking into those top 10 and then making sure that you're covered in those areas. Small businesses, please utilize all the benefits that have been mentioned here on this call and all of the websites that were mentioned. If you're looking for this presentation, it will be posted on the Greater Cincinnati Safety Council's website. So thank you very much, Howie, for making your presentation available to everyone. And if you know someone who was not able to attend today but would benefit from the information, please make sure you direct them to our site. And now I'd like to quickly share a great branding opportunity that we have every month, great sales engagement and branding opportunity for any company who would be interested in sharing a little bit more about your company with the Greater Cincinnati Safety Council. We do welcome monthly meeting sponsors, and the benefits are listed here on the site. You have an opportunity to have your brand listed in all the invitations that go out and the marketing communication. It will be listed on the presentation that is housed into perpetuity on our website. And you have an opportunity at the start of the meeting to address our members and inform everyone a little bit about the good work that you do. So if you're interested in sponsoring a meeting, my contact information is listed below. I would love to talk to you. And then we are going to be off in December. So our steering committee has voted that we're going to take a break during the holidays at the end of the year. It's a busy time at the end of the year, and we want to give everybody a chance to celebrate the holidays and a little more time back on your calendar. Our next meeting will be January 12th. As always, 2:30 to 4, and our topic will be mental health, which I think in January will be crucial coming out of the holidays and whatever interesting turn, hopefully for the good, that COVID brings us. Mental health is a very much a reality during the winter, and especially with COVID. So please consider joining us. And then one new thing that we're going to start in 2022. I'm hoping that if there is anybody on the line today that is hosting sort of an informal watch party, if you could come off of mute, turn your camera on. We'd love to see if we have anybody who has 3 or more people joining to watch Safety Council. You are now considered a watch party. So in 2022, we're going to encourage gather, if your company is gathering in the office, bring a couple people into a conference room, into the lunchroom, into your office, and host a watch party. So if we have anyone who is hosting a informal watch party and you didn't even know that's what you were doing today, please turn your camera on or jump into chat. We'd love to reward you today for getting ahead of the curve and hosting a watch party.
Hey, Beth, I got to take off. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Howie, we appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Great discussion today. I think we are about at our time. We don't have any watch parties, but I'm excited. I'm confident that we're going to be able to give some prizes away to some members who might be hosting watch parties in January. So get your colleagues ready, and you'll be able to go into a drawing for gift cards if you're hosting a watch party in January. So I will say an early Happy New Year, and we are looking forward to a great 2022 for the Greater Cincinnati Safety Council. Thank you to our steering committee, and thank you to all of our